This is Senate Transportation. It's Friday, January 23rd. We're with the Vermont Citizens Advisory Committee on Lake Champlain's future. I have a list of 5 people, and I'm not sure who's first. Why don't you take the chair, and you should each give us your name and a little background before you dive into your testimony.
Perfect. Good morning. I'm Karina Daly. I'm the chair of the CAC. And we're expecting one more person, Bob Fisher. So hopefully he will be arriving soon. And then the rest are online. So I'll let them introduce themselves, and then I can give sort of a broad overview. And then I'll pass it over to other folks to dive deeper into some of our issues. Why don't we start with Brett?
Hi, Karina. Do you want to introduce what the CAC is and the action plan?
Chair Westman was hoping to have everyone introduce themselves and just their name and who they represent, and okay.
Got it. Fine. My name is Breck Bowden, and I'm a retired professor from the University of Vermont in watershed science and planning. I was the director of the Lake Champlain Sea Grant, which was a NOAA-funded program, is a NOAA-funded program focused on improving the health and environment and economy of Lake Champlain. I'm a member of the Vermont Citizens Advisory Committee from Burlington. Sorry that I can't be with you in person today.
Perfectly fine that you're on the screen. Next.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lori Fisher. I'm a Citizens Advisory Committee member from Williston and the recently retired Executive Director of the Lake Champlain Committee, the organization dedicated to lake protection and stewardship. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Andrew Milliken. I also, sorry not to be there with you in person. I am a Citizens Advisory Committee member from Charlotte, Vermont, and also recently retired, in my case, from a over 30-year career with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, working on ecosystems, habitats, and species throughout nationally, regionally, and in the Lake Champlain region.
Thank you.
And I'm Bob Fisher. I'm from Barrie. I'm a longtime member of the Citizens Advisory Committee. I am the Water Quality Superintendent for the City of South Burlington, and I was the 2023 New England Water Environment Association President.
Perfect. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for having us. So with that, I'll dive a little bit deeper and just give you guys an overview of who we are. Are there other questions? Oh, Mary.
Westman wanted.
Yeah.
Yes, could you introduce yourself?
Mary, would you introduce?
I think she's muted.
I work at Department of Environmental Conservation, and I provide some staff support to the CAC.
It's nice to see you there. I was instructed to ask you by the staff person in the Appropriations Committee, what's your most embarrassing moment with your father?
So far.
And you don't have to answer that if you don't want to. But it's great to see you. It's great to see you. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, and I should say that Mary is an integral part of the CAC. She has helped behind the scenes in scheduling. She helped prepare our action plan. She organizes our meetings. So tremendous help, and we're grateful for DEC for sharing her capacity with us.
We think it's great that you're here.
I'm happy to be here and see what goes on in the Transportation Committee. I know you guys get up to a lot of mischief, so it's good to
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senate Chair Westman and Vice Chair White, Senator White, and committee members for having us today. We really appreciate you taking the time. And while it may feel a little bit disconnected how transportation connects to our action plan, I think there's a lot of connection. So we appreciate you taking the time. So big picture, we're a 14-member Citizens Advisory Committee on Lake Champlain's future. There are 10 citizens represented from a diverse spectrum, and really we try and have a broad representation across the watershed. And as you think of Lake Champlain, and I know not all of you reside in the Lake Champlain Basin, but it does comprise more than 50% of the state. So it's the largest watershed in the state. And I think many of the issues that are facing Lake Champlain are reflective in other parts of the state as well, and other watersheds. So as you listen, I think it does have a lot of overlap. In addition to our 10 citizen members, we have 4 legislative representatives, 2 from the Senate and 2 from the House, who support our work. And we are all united in that we share a vision for a clean, healthy Lake Champlain. We have a lot throughout the year. We have monthly meetings where we bring in experts on different issues facing Lake Champlain. And so our job is to collect data and share it with the public. So really being a liaison between issues facing Lake Champlain and the public to share information. And that information includes focusing on wildlife issues, clean water issues, and human connected issues facing the lake. And then ultimately, our charge is to prepare an action plan every year and present it to the General Assembly. And so that's what we're here to do today. And I will say that our action plan, the issues aren't changing every year. They continue. So our action plan doesn't change dramatically every year. It's always, we always look at it with a fresh eye and think about fresh perspective, but a lot of these issues have been ongoing issues for the lake, and we continue to focus on them. So really working hard to think about that. And then just lastly, I will say that we have been around since before the Lake Champlain Basin program. So we existed starting in 1989. So we're like fairly old and have a strong history of just citizen involvement coming together around the lake and around issues for the lake. We also work with the New York and Quebec CACs. So there are 2 other CACs because we share the watershed with them on issues relevant to the lake. So it's really a partnership. So with that, I wanted to just focus on our major priorities in the action plan and this Venn diagram on the top. So you can see that as I said, we're coming together around a healthy lake focused on biodiversity, healthy ecosystems, restoration, climate resilience, and clean water. And I will pass it over to Breck Bowden to dive into the one issue. We'll talk about flood resilience and drought, and then we'll just go around and everyone can share a little bit about that thing. And happy to take questions at the end or as we go, whatever works best for you.
Thanks, Karina. Again, my name is Breck Bowden, member of the committee, and I'd like to guide you through our recommendations for the advanced flood mitigation and climate resilience. The first of our 4 top priorities. You can find these starting at the bottom of page 2 on our brief. First, it's important to note that as large as Lake Champlain is, the land area that drains into it, its watershed, is much larger, unusually so, in fact. Thus, any activities on land eventually affect Lake Champlain. This can be a challenge and it can be an opportunity. Over history, our activities on land have severely stressed the lake. Compounding these challenges, more recent climate change is multiplying the stresses on the lake. In the last 15 years, the Lake Champlain Basin has been impacted by all 25 declared FEMA disaster events. In fact, during that time period, Vermont experienced the 7th highest number of disasters in the country. This includes the multiple floods that we faced in 2023 and 2024. And more recently this year, the basin experienced severe drought and record-setting low lake levels. As the frequency and severity of extreme events increases, swift action and investments are needed to ensure our communities, environment, and economy are more resilient to climate change impacts. While these are daunting challenges, management of our land activities and landscape characteristics also present important opportunities. Paraphrasing our action plan slightly, we suggest 5 high-level opportunities in this priority area. First, restore and conserve headwaters, river corridors, floodplains, wetlands, soils, and riparian buffers. Second, invest in our agency staff and empower them to work across agencies and outside organizations. Third, support funding for research and implementation that will restore natural stream processes that will keep Lake Champlain healthy. Fourth, invest in sustainable agriculture, forests, and working lands initiatives that reduce phosphorus runoff to our waters. And finally, invest in public and private infrastructure to meet modern standards and withstand future flooding. Let me focus on just 2 of these opportunities that relate to bills that might come to your committee. First, nature-based solutions are cost-effective measures that mitigate the effects of climate change. Examples include efforts to right-size culverts and bridges, as well as dam removal to restore aquatic organism passage, reduce erosion and nutrient loading, and increase flood resilience and public safety. These are often complex projects that require substantial funding and collaboration among state agencies, local organizations, and communities. Investments in these approaches would help to address the first 3 opportunities that we identify in this priority area. Second, we note that there are currently 17 bills that have been introduced in this legislative session that address the impacts of flooding either directly or indirectly. In doing so, these bills would also affect Lake Champlain either directly or indirectly. For example, H467 would require the Agency of Transportation to help municipalities upgrade infrastructure, improve stormwater management, develop a system to track flood response equipment across the state, and procure equipment to remove debris that would otherwise get into rivers and eventually Lake Champlain. We think that many of these requirements make sense and ask you to support H467 and other bills that might affect Lake Champlain. Doing so would address the last of our 5 opportunities in this priority area. Finally, our committee strongly endorses the Flood Safety Act, Act 121, which mandates V-Trans to institutionalize climate resilience, making it a core part of planning, programming, and project selection. More broadly, Vermont's resilience implementation strategy makes numerous recommendations that affects how V-Trans operates. The strategy encourages V-Trans to move beyond a focus on post-disaster repair and to prioritize planning and implementation that will protect the transportation network from weather disasters and build for long-term, sustainable, and efficient movement of people and goods. Any bills that advance these strategies would also help to protect Lake Champlain. Thank you for your attention to this priority in our plan, and I'll now pass the floor over to Bob Fisher, who will address our water contaminants priorities.
Thank you. I'm Bob Fisher from Barry, Water Quality Superintendent for South Burlington. First of all, I'll quickly mention that we were formed the Tri-Merit by federal and actually international law with Quebec and New York. Also, I had not heard about 457 until then, and I thought I'd just bring this up because it's maybe relevant. I'm on the steering committee for WARN, WARN. It's FEMA program, and we have a list of equipment that's run by Vermont Rural Water and Vermont DEC. And each one is run by each state. In New Hampshire, it also includes public works, but here it only includes water and wastewater operators. But there already is a database of pumps, equipment. And we've been together for like 15, 20 years, just riffing on that because I happen to hear that.
Good.
So I'm here to speak about contaminants, especially road salt. That may not be very pertinent to this committee, but yes. And all I can say is we seem to be following the same trajectory as phosphorus, which I'm, more familiar with, the water quality operator. We have 5 impacted streams. Theoretically, the EPA will come down with the TMDL eventually. I was a federal fishery biologist, and it is starting to impact the macroinvertebrates. I'm also a 26-year ski team coach at Killington. I just landed another Olympian, Olympia Giascio. So I drive down 107 from Barrie, including the year when there was no 107, and it took me longer to get there during Irene. So I understand road salt is kind of a little valuable. Nonetheless, we're asking to somewhat model the New Hampshire program, where they have, because a lot of it is private salt and there's liability. If you want to haul, somebody breaks their leg, the state takes on some of that liability if you do the training and whatnot and pass, all the steps for that. Another thing would be, but regardless, it seems to be following the same track as, the feds will eventually come down and start to do things. So it'd be better if we did things, and it's legacy. It's the same as phosphorus too. You could stop doing all salt right now, and it's, we're pretty salty. Nonetheless, I see the value of it. My first house, I did live out west for 12 years, was in Lake Tahoe, and I will say we got 400 to 500 inches at my house on average, and they used way less salt. You saw a car going by with rust all over it, and you said, New York plates. Because I had a car from New York plates too, rust all over it. Anyway, besides that, quickly, PFAS is another big one. For us, we use our biosolids for manufacture. We're using with V-Trans very effectively in a 5% mix. I have found in my 16 plus years on the CAC, we are very orientated on water quality, and we still are. Air quality seems to be having an impact with all the work we've done when the river turns chocolate and all the, I put out basically drinking water for my 2 wastewater facilities. In my opinion, it's still a good use of it. We use it in a 5% mix for V-Trans along roads. They use it for park and rides. They use it for other airports, places where people aren't going to be. They test every 1,000 yards. It does not come over the background limits. I can landfill it if need be, but the landfill has very little capacity. Additionally, it'll triple my costs, which is not as big a concern. It'll be another $300,000 a year. We also are Burlington. We could do that. But nonetheless, decreasing greenhouse gases would be a mess. I'm going 5 miles down the road to ECI where they mix it together. I'll have to haul it all the way to Coventry or Ohio or somewhere. They'll have to import the phosphorus, my train. So that's basically what I'm at.
Wow.
Anything?
Who's mixing the biosolids?
So right now, I think ECI is doing a lot of it. It's also
ECN?
engineers construction. They're controlling it. And they're mixing in a 5% mix with another 5% or something, and making manufactured topsoil, much as Governor Scott did with he has some sitting in his yard there.
Right.
But it's got to go somewhere. Every average American male weighs about 185 pounds or produces 1 pound of poop a day. Women produce about the same, and just they're smaller in the United States. So that's 365 pounds for the average American male. I'm probably slightly above that. And
that's a good way to frame it to the public.
it's got to go somewhere. It's got to go.
Yeah,
She did wastewater treatment.
yeah, a little,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
mostly solid waste actually.
Right. So
But-
it's all related. And unfortunately, it's all kind of triage at this point. I mean, there is no easy solution. It's all use triage,
Yeah.
you understand.
Can I just ask,
Yep,
or
one
just,
more.
just let you know, I'm sure you're familiar with stormwater utilities.
Mhm.
I'm in the east side of the state where we don't have the issues yet, but I want us to not have the issues by doing things right now. And there's a lot of potential changes going on with the ability of towns to have stormwater utilities. So just stay in touch with that, and I can tell you more after if you like.
Sure. We have our own, we were the first one that has our own stormwater utility, South Burlington.
I know.
So we have,
Back to your people.
yes.
Yeah.
We actually have an opening for stormwater superintendent,
Oh.
Yeah.
but I better go because
Okay.
we're running up short on time. Thank you.
Yeah.
And next up will be,
I believe it is Andrew and then Lori.
Muted.
You're
Muted.
muted, Andrew.
Muted, Andrew.
That has to be in the lexicon.
Yeah, I can go. If you want aquatic invasive species next, then Lori is doing that today.
Oh, apologies.
You choose which one you want to go.
Sure, Lori.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Lori.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Westman, Vice Chair White, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify about aquatic invasive species today on behalf of the Vermont Citizens Advisory Committee. My name is Lori Fisher, and I'm a CAC member from Williston and the recently retired Executive Director of the Lake Champlain Committee. Aquatic invasive species, or AIS, are a significant threat to Lake Champlain and other Vermont waterways. They disrupt native species, degrade aquatic ecosystem integrity, impair recreation, lower water quality, and damage infrastructure and reduce property values. Once established, these species are extremely difficult and costly to manage, making prevention the most effective strategy. AIS are particularly problematic because of shared traits that allow them to thrive at the expense of native species. They often outcompete native plants and animals for food and habitat, reproduce prolifically, grow rapidly, and tolerate a wide range of environmental conditions. These characteristics allow them to establish quickly, spread rapidly, and alter ecosystems in ways that are often irreversible. These species spread not only through natural movement, but primarily through human activity and other species acting as vectors. Recreational boating, trailers, and equipment can unintentionally transport invasive plants and animals from one water body to another. In addition, waterfowl, fish, and other wildlife can carry seeds, plant fragments, or small organisms between connected or nearby waterways. For this reason, AIS prevention is not only an environmental issue, but also a transportation systems issue. Canals, locks, boat launches, and access points act as transportation corridors, much like roads and bridges, and require proactive management to prevent unintended consequences. Once aquatic invasive species become established, eradication is rarely possible. Long-term management requires sustained investment, and this is why early detection, rapid response, and spread prevention are so critical. These efforts depend on adequate staffing, monitoring, and public education, as well as visible and well-supported prevention infrastructure at access points. Lake Champlain currently has 51 documented aquatic invasive species and remains vulnerable to additional introductions because of its connections to larger systems. By comparison, the Hudson River has 122 documented AIS, and the Great Lakes have 184. Over 60% of the invasive species in Lake Champlain with a known origin entered via canals, primarily through the Champlain Canal at the lake's southern end. This canal directly connects the Hudson River to Lake Champlain, and it served as a pathway for species such as zebra mussel, water chestnut, and Eurasian water milfoil. The invasive round goby provides a clear example of how risks play out in real time. Native to Eurasia, round goby was introduced to the Great Lakes through ballast water from international shipping, spread through the Erie Canal and Mohawk River into the Hudson River system. In June 2024, environmental DNA found round goby was detected above Loch C12 in the Champlain Canal, signaling that the species is approaching Lake Champlain. To put this in context, the Champlain Canal connects the Hudson River to Lake Champlain through Loch C1 through C12, with Loch C12 at Whitehall as the final loch before the lake. And each loch is a potential pathway for invasive species because it concentrates water, boats, and organisms in one location. Boats moving through a loch can transport invasives from one water body to the next. And the loch itself is it transfers water and potentially these species between connected rivers, canals, and lakes. The lower locks are closest to the Hudson River and often the first points of entry for new species, while the upper locks are the last line of defense for Lake Champlain. Again, making early detection, inspection, and prevention measures at each lock critical to protecting the lake as well as waterways across Vermont. Vermont should increase investment in consistent staffing and stable funding for AIS programs, including public outreach, monitoring, boat launch stewards, and boat wash stations to complement cooperative work underway in New York and Quebec. We'll ask the legislature to consider 4 specific actions. 1, establish a dedicated funding source, such as a mandatory boat registration decal for motorized and non-motorized watercraft, modeled after Maine's successful AIS program, which has generated stable funding for inspections, education, and outreach. 2, implement a mandatory water inspection and certification program. Watercraft inspection and certification program. 3, invest in high visibility inspection and cleaning stations at key access points. Senate Transportation could encourage VTrans to partner with Vermont DEC and Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department and the Lake Champlain Basin Program to strategically locate hot water decontamination stations on roadsides throughout the state. And 4, strengthen coordination and advocacy with New York and Quebec, particularly around canal management to protect against AIS entry into Lake Champlain. Protection from aquatic invasive species requires a dual approach, preventing new species from entering while actively managing those already established to limit their spread and ecological impact. By investing in early detection, monitoring, rapid response, and public education, Vermont can reduce long-term costs, protect recreational access, and preserve ecosystem health. And these efforts safeguard not only Lake Champlain, but also all of Vermont's waterways, ensuring that lakes and rivers remain healthy, resilient, and enjoyable. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll pass the baton to Andrew now.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you to the members of the Senate Transportation Committee for this opportunity to meet with you. Again, I'm Andrew Milliken, a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee from Lake Champlain from Charlotte. And I'm going to address the final area we wanted to highlight with you today, and that relates to the real need for increased and equitable public access to Lake Champlain in Vermont. And that equitability is both in terms of users and geography. And just a little background or context, in 2023, outdoor recreation accounted for about $2.1 billion in Vermont's value-added gross domestic product, or GDP. And the contribution of Vermont's outdoor recreation to the state's GDP increased from about 3.7% in 2020 to 4.8% in 2023. This makes Vermont rank second in the country for the contribution of outdoor recreation as a percentage of the state's total GDP, and that's only behind the state of Hawaii. So that gives you a little context of the importance of continuing to support a lot of aspects related to outdoor recreation, and in this case, particularly access to Lake Champlain. And one of the things that is needed is increased access areas for low impact activities like swimming and picnicking and paddling, kayakers, etc. They are not always supported or allowed at the Fish and Wildlife boat launches. As you may know, the vast majority of funding for public access areas comes through the hunting and fishing fees that are collected by Vermont Fish and Wildlife and managed by the federal government. This then, of course, sort of biases that access towards fishing and hunting access. but it also is an increasing challenge as the amount of license fees for hunting and fishing and trapping have started to decrease in the state at a time when we actually need increased access to recreation. So we would ask the legislature to consider working with state agencies, Fish and Wildlife and DEC, for a license to complement revenue from hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses. And that new source of funding would include people like kayakers, bird watchers, and hikers that would utilize these access areas and boat launches. The other key point is geographic equity, and particularly wanted to note that there is no public access in the southern part of Lake Champlain, and so there's a real need for providing access there, additional access in the southern part of the lake, and that could include the creation of a state park in the South Lake, noting that there is no state parks in this section of the lake. So that, again, main points there are equitable access and access in the southern part of the lake as being high priorities that we asked the legislature to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to wrap up?
Yes. And
I would say this is pretty good.
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Summarizes it all pretty good.
And I also passed around a State of the Lake report, which is not something that we produce, but Lake Champlain Basin Program does. And it was brought up in a prior committee presentation. And so that's another great reference as to just an update of what's going on in the lake. But really, in closing, we really appreciate your time and thank you for considering these issues. And let us know if you have more questions.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye, Mary.
Okay, see you later.
So Burlington's always interested in talking about it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Probably working with your Tom DePietro was
Now,
the
Thanks very much.
stormwater at one point, and he was the stormwater.
can you let Bernie in?
Just a little thinking, I actually.
The lot.
Oh.
24
Is it
years
New York?
New York. I think they own at least most of them. They're under New York State Thruway Authority.
Okay.
Or yeah,
Yeah.
which or the I'm sorry, they're under the thruway is under the Erie Erie Canal Authority, which appears to have somewhat godlike
I write down
authority.
today, so.
Because we tried to deal with them with Vermont DEC and New York DEC. New York DEC said that under their regulations,
I was on that committee.
they really,
4 years.
because they predate so many things, they really do have,
Okay.
you can sort of just ask them.
So that'll be a long-term project.
Yeah, like
Because I'm
DEC can't just
interested in
come down
helping.
on them and say, you're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Because they have all sorts of
All right.
exemptions.
Thank
I'm
you.
in.
Thank you.
I don't know, do we own any
Thank
of the
you.
canals, you know,
Bernie,
that
are you there?
Are they all New York? Thank you.
Bernie?
Good morning.
Bernie?
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay. And I am having a really hard time hearing you folks. Hang on.
Well, we were all talking at once and sorry, that was partly my fault. Can you hear us now? Oh,
I've got my volume turned all the way up and I can just barely hear you.
Well, I think you know what, we're looking for maybe 10 minutes or so. How are we doing this winter? It was briefly mentioned in our joint hearing the other day that we might be running over budget. And I thought that given the winter we've got, give us an update.
All righty. So the secretary did mention that we were way over on budget, and I think that was, I think he got a couple numbers confused. At that time, we were running about 20,000 ton over from last year. in salt. Last year was a heavy winter, so I'm kind of using that as our judge. Because if I use a 5-year average, we've had 3 really light winters.
What does 20 ton over mean? What
Yeah,
percent
and
are you
yeah,
over?
so that number's really fluid. Right now, we're 14,000 tons over. And that's about $1.5 million in salt. Now, I got our budget printed off. We do a monthly graph on where we are. And our monthly graph was looking really good. We're 6 months into the fiscal year. We get our spending authority on the July 1. We've expended 40% of our budget as of December 31st. Now, I need to take into account the salt sheds are partially empty. So this morning, what I did with math is I just pretended that we had to fill them up and pay for it. So if we fill them up tomorrow and then pay for it tomorrow, we'll be at 48% of our budget expended.
And would you, where would you normally expect to be at this time?
We would like to be right where we are, right around 50%.
So we're actually right on budget, and it's good because when I heard that we were 25% over, and knowing that we've got the budget adjustment moving along, I wanted to make sure that we but we sound pretty good.
We're good right now. Now the catch is these numbers are so fluid.
Yeah.
Like when I talked to Joe a couple of weeks ago, we were 20,000 ton over, and then we got a little bit of a break. And this morning we're 14,000 ton over. And if we could get, say, a little bit of a break for 2 weeks, we might be right back in line. And then if we have 2 weeks of, you know, the trucks are out every day, we're going to be even higher. So we are, I have 3 sheets in front of me that we're tracking this. We track our salt on a weekly basis. We're on week 11 of a 25-week cycle. That comes out every single week on, for us, it's Wednesday. We also track our inventory every single week. Every shed gets measured, physically measured. So we stay on top of that. And then the complete holistic budget graph comes out on the 31st of each month, or probably a few days after the end of the month. So we're on it. This is very indicative to when I testify that we testify that July to November, when we get our spending authority, we're a little bit light on activities planning for a hard winter. And then if we have a hard winter, we're good. If we have an easy winter, April, May, and June, we get shovel-ready projects moving. So today, I'm comfortable.
So it looks to me like you, by a week from today, will be ready to wrap up the books for January. And the 2nd is a Monday, the 2nd of February. Do you think you could report into us with what the monthly totals are and where we are? Do you think you could send your an update on your report to us then?
I am so sorry, Chair. I only heard about every third word. I've exhausted everything I can on this computer to make the sound come up, and it's the only thing I could do is maybe log out and log on with a different computer.
We'll email you our question.
Okay, and I will happily oblige with whatever you folks need.
Yeah, we'll email the question. Thanks, Ernie.
Great attitude.
Thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulty.
Yeah, well, we can get him off. We've actually got 20 minutes before the next piece stops. So why don't you